There is a house in West Virginia where most of the people inside cannot speak. For 100 years, nobody came up that road. No doctor, no help, no stranger. The family was left alone with what their ancestors had done to them. Then the world found out. Money came in. The house got fixed. And that was the thing that finally destroyed them. Trace the eastern edge of the United States inland, up into the Appalachian Mountains, and you find a scatter of settlements so small that half of them never made it onto a map. One of them is called Odd. Nobody agrees on where the name came from. The town has spent the rest of its life earning it anyway. At the turn of the last century, this region carried the country's industrial revolution on its back. The mountains were full of coal, and the coal built everything. Companies cut roads into the valleys, threw up towns beside the mines, filled them with workers. Families arrived for the work, had children, and those children grew up and had children of their own, all inside the same narrow valleys. Then the coal ran out. The mines closed. And when the mines closed, the only reason anyone had ever come to these valleys closed with them. The roads were bad, where there were roads at all. Reaching a city could take days by wagon. Nobody could easily get out, and just as importantly, nobody came in. No new work, no new people. And when no new people arrive in a place for long enough, something quiet and inevitable happens to the families already there. The pool of people you could marry shrinks until it is only the people you are already related to. In Odd, cousins marrying cousins was not a scandal. It was arithmetic. There was simply no one else. But poverty and bad roads and cousin marriage do not explain the Whittakers. Plenty of isolated families married close and stayed ordinary. What happened in this house started somewhere nearer the bone. At the top of this family line, there were two brothers, Henry and John. What matters about them is not that they were brothers, it is that they were identical twins. An ordinary pair of siblings share, on average, about half their DNA. The genes from a mother and a father shuffle differently into every child, so two people raised in the same house, born to the same parents, still end up genetically quite different from one another. Identical twins do not work that way. They come from a single fertilized egg that split in two. Their DNA is, for all practical purposes, the same. Two bodies carrying one blueprint. Both twins married, both had children, and then a son of one twin married a daughter of the other. On paper, those two were cousins. In biology, they were closer to half-siblings because their fathers were not two men. They were one man's genome living in two bodies. That was the first fold. The tree stopped growing outward and began turning back on itself, and every generation after pulled the same knot tighter. Cousins married cousins. Their children married cousins. And in 1935, two of those children, Gracie and John Emery Whittaker, married each other. Gracie and John were double first cousins. An ordinary pair of cousins shares one set of grandparents. Gracie and John shared both. Every line of their family tree ran back to the same small handful of people, and at the very top of those lines sat two men whose DNA had been identical to begin with. Then, the knot does what knots do. The human body is good at hiding its own flaws. When a harmful gene comes from one parent and a healthy version comes from the other, the healthy copy usually wins and the flaw stays buried. But when both parents carry the same harmful genes, there is no healthy copy left to draw. There is no other card in the deck. Gracie and John had 15 children. Not all 15 made it out of childhood. One daughter lived 10 months. A son lived 30 days. Others reached their teens and then died young, hearts giving out early. The ones who survived did not survive whole. What was left was a small group of people who would spend their entire lives paying a bill their parents had run up before they were born. Danny Ray, the one the world would eventually recognize, never said a meaningful word in his life. He answered the world in hard grunts, in sounds closer to a dog's bark, in sudden screams. His eyes crossed. He spent his days moving around the yard of a house with the paint coming off the walls and sheets. His sister Lorene was much the same, silent, answering in low sounds and nothing else. But behind Lorene's silence, there was a second wound that had nothing to do with her genes. According to accounts of the family, sometime in her 30s she was assaulted, and her son Timmy was born as a result. Some who told the story said the person responsible came from inside the family itself. It was never established, and it sits over that household as a rumor rather than a fact. Timmy carried the same genetic damage as the rest, and for a while he looked like the one place the pattern broke. He was the only person in that house who finished high school. He could read, he could speak, and then, slowly, he stopped. He settled into the same grunts as the uncles and aunts around him, because a child learns the language of the room he is in, and that room had only one. Two of the brothers, Larry and Kenneth, were born closer to ordinary. They could talk, hold a conversation, handle small tasks, which means that in that house there were people capable of asking the question, why can't half of us speak? Why do we live like this? Ask them, and the answer comes back flat. Maybe it was the coal. Whatever their ancestors actually did, nobody in that family was willing to dig it up. No healthy adult was ever really in charge of that house. There was no money, no doctor, no road worth driving. And yet the family held together year after year for one reason. Betty. Betty could speak, and Betty could run a house. And in that family it made her irreplaceable. As a girl, she had already been helping her mother Gracie raise the younger children. When Gracie was gone, Betty made her a promise and simply kept doing it. She would never marry. She would never leave. She would spend every year she had caring for the brothers and sisters who could not care for themselves. She kept that promise for 50 years. She spent her life inside that peeling house, cleaning up after them, cooking for them, tracking what each of them needed, standing between the family and any stranger who came up the road. She never had a life of her own, because there was no version of that promise where she did. And there was one more thing keeping the world out. The town. Neighbors and Odd guarded the Whittakers, and guarded the whole town while they were at it. Outsiders who drove in were met with shotguns in doorways and stares that did not blink. The family lived on disability payments and social support and the quiet help of the people around them, hidden behind that wall for decades. The wall was not there to imprison them. It was there because people from outside had a habit of coming to laugh. In 2004, a photographer named Mark Leda came looking. He was working on a project about ordinary Americans, and word of an unusual family in the mountains had reached him. He got exactly what every outsider got. A neighbor met him with a shotgun and told him to leave. In the end, he came back with a police officer beside him, and only then did anyone open a door. He photographed the family, then he left, and nothing happened. The pictures went out into the world, and the world looked at them, and the world did nothing. The Whittakers were not hidden anymore. Their faces existed now, in print, where anyone could find them. And for 16 years, no help came. Nobody arrived. Betty went on cleaning and cooking and translating, day after day, in the same peeling house, while her family's photographs sat in a book that had not changed a single thing about her life. What finally changed had nothing to do with the Whittakers at all. It was Laida who changed. By 2020, the man who had once needed a police escort to reach that porch was one of the most followed documentary makers on the internet, with millions of people watching whatever he put in front of them. So he went back. Same family, same house, same silence. But this time the footage did not sit in a book. It went out to tens of millions of people, and the Whittakers, who had spent a century unseen, were known around the world inside of a week. What changed was never that someone finally noticed them. It was that someone finally had an audience. The first thing that audience brought was help, and the help was real. Laida did not just film them and drive away. He showed the collapsing house, the trailers, the outhouse, the worn-out furniture, the daily work of keeping people alive who could not speak. He set up a fundraiser. It brought in close to $100,000. For the first time in the history of that family, money arrived that nobody had to ration. Parts of the house were repaired. They got a refrigerator, bed, a vehicle. When Leda came back, Ray walked him around the property to show off what was new, proud of it, pointing out a dent in the truck where a deer had hit it. A man who could not speak found a way to tell a stranger that something in his life had finally improved. For 3 years, it looked like this story had found a good ending, but the audience did not go away. They started coming down the dirt road, not to help, to look. Strangers drove into Odd to stare at the Whittakers, to film them, to photograph them from the road. The porch where Betty had spent 50 years keeping her family alive became a place people stopped at on the way through. The wall the town had built around them, the shotguns, the hard stares, all of it had existed for exactly this reason, and it had held for 100 years. A few videos on the internet took it down. Then the money began to do its own damage. In 2024, Lida received word that Larry Whittaker had died, and the family could not afford to bury him. He gave them $1,000 for the funeral. Larry was not dead. Days later, Lida filmed him sitting on his own porch, alive, hearing about his death for the first time from a video someone had shown him the night before. The funeral did not exist. The money had been taken by Larry's own daughter, BJ, who had faked her father's death to get it. Confronted, she admitted it. She said she was not proud of it. She said she needed help for a drug problem. The family had survived isolation and poverty and a century of genetic collapse. What it could not survive was being worth something. In September 2025, the state came to Odd. Adult Protective Services removed 3 people from the house: Danny Ray, 72, Lorene, 79, and Timmy, 46. 3 people who had never in their lives known anything outside that property, whose only language was the sounds of that household, whose only safe place was each other. There is a case for what the state did. The house had no working plumbing to speak of. 3 people in their 70s and 40s were living in a building that was coming apart, cared for by a woman in her 70s who was coming apart with it. But nobody explained any of that to the people left behind. Betty was told only that they were being helped, and that they could not live there anymore. She was not told where they were taken. She was not told when she could see them. Larry sat by the phone waiting for a call that did not come. Weeks went by. Their cases are confidential, and confidentiality means that the woman who raised those 3 people from childhood is not entitled to know what happened to them. Betty is 73. She gave every year of her life to a promise she made as a girl. She fed them, cleaned them, spoke for them when they could not speak for themselves, turned away strangers at the door, and asked for nothing back. And one day people arrived and took them, and did not tell her where. Betty and Larry are still in the house. Reporters who went back found beans and sausage left out on the stove and insects crossing the counter. On the wall there is a calendar. It is still turned to March. A town too small for the map. 2 brothers who were the same person twice. A family tree that folded inward until both sets of grandparents were the same people. 15 children, 2 of them counting their lives in weeks. A sister who never once left. $100,000 and a truck with a dent in it. A daughter who sold a funeral for a father who was not dead. And a calendar nobody has turned since March. For 100 years nobody came up that road. Then everybody did. And what is left in that house is a woman in her 70s who spent every year of her life keeping 3 people alive, and who has not been told where they were taken. If you found this story worth watching, leave a like. It really helps the channel. And if you want more true stories like this, subscribe to Echo Trace. I'll see you in the next one.